So what is good work? Many countries now have realised that it is not just the task that work is good for you, but rather that good or sustainable work is good for you. And there are several definitions of this. So one of the definitions that we're using here in Australia is that good work balances the interests of the individuals, the employers and society in order to deliver performance, engagement and fairness, so that individuals are productive in a sustainable way and can remain in employment in a healthy way over time. And people talk about job quality, and one of the key issues is around whether employees have what's called autonomy, which is the idea that you have some degree of control over your work or some degree of control over how you do your tasks at work. There are, of course, some jobs that actually real difficulty doing that, and the challenge in job design is to actually improve those. That can be done by the conditions of the employment, so whether they're full-time, you're part-time, or even choice about working hours can improve that part of job quality, as well as the actual nature of the working environment itself. The reason why good job quality is important is that we've now seen over the past few years some reasonably good evidence to show that actually poor quality jobs are associated with a reduction in well-being and a reduction in mental health. And in fact, although we know very, very strongly, and we've seen again and again and again, that being unemployed is much worse for your mental health and well-being than being employed, if you move from unemployment into a very low quality job, your mental health actually gets worse. Whereas if you move from unemployment into good quality jobs or even moderately good quality of jobs, your mental health and well-being improves. I've been working at the interface of work and mental ill health for about 20 years now. And one of the key distinctions is understanding some of the differences between those people with serious mental illness, those people with more common mental illnesses like anxiety and depression, and the now more recent focus on well-being, positive psychology and meaning in life. Focusing on those people who have more serious mental illnesses, we see very low rates of working and occupation in those groups. In some countries, it's almost as low as 1 in 10 people with disorders like schizophrenia working in those populations in countries like America or Australia. In other countries, they have much higher rates of working, up to 30 or 40%. What that tells us is that it's not just about the illness itself that leads to poor rates of working, but the psychosocial environment, the structure, the system can actually enable people to work, and there are positive aspects we need to look at around there. One other thing we need to look at is around disability itself, and it's a terrible thing that in most countries in the world, those people with a mental health disability are far less likely to work than those people with a physical health disability, and that is true in most countries. Amongst those people with common mental disorders, like I said, things like depression and anxiety, again, there were lower rates of employment compared to people who do not have those disorders. However, again, in most countries, most people with those kind of disorders are actually working. So there obviously must be a range of things that can enable people who have those conditions to remain at work and get all the good benefits of good work. Finally, from a governmental point of view, we have the idea that increasingly we see more and more of the causes of people receiving income benefits, disability support pensions being due to mental illness, and that has been on the rise in most countries in the OECD. It's begun to plateau off now, but around 30 to 40% of people who have receipt of an income benefit is because of mental ill health problems. So that is an enormous cause of economic issues. So people are increasingly focused now on the mental wealth and mental capital of people with mental health disorders and how we can improve those and also become more resilient and cope with the stresses of work. So what about the reasons for those low rates? Why are people excluded from the workplace in such a way? Well, firstly, there's a set of common risk factors for both not working or working at lower levels and mental ill health problems. So people with lower levels of education, lower socioeconomic standing, and a range of other psychosocial factors are more likely to have mental health problems. And of course, those things also lead to a greater likelihood of not working. Then there's two interesting discourses in the field in mental illness and in public health, one of which is around stigma and discrimination. And some of my earliest work has been showing that people with mental ill health are discriminated against in the workplace. They're less likely to get a job. If they do have a job, then they are more likely to be laid off or retrenched when they have a job. And increasingly, as we see greater what's called precarious work with short-term contracts, less long-term contracts, less benefits, less job security, people with mental health problems are more likely to be in those groups and thus be laid off. So there is that stigma and discrimination, and many countries have introduced disability discrimination legislation to try and get across that. The other side of the coin is that actually mental illnesses themselves are associated with a degree of impairment. So many of the more severe illnesses are associated with not thinking as well, not thinking as clearly, taking more time to make decisions, motivational difficulties, and difficulties in interpersonal relationships, all of which are really important in today's workplace. Which brings me on to the other idea, that the workplace is changing. We've moved from a kind of agrarian into more industrialised society, and now into jobs that require a set of different skills. We have skills that require technological intervention, that require quick thinking, that require a lot more, some people call emotional intelligence. It's about relationships. It's about managing other people. And many of those skills can place great demands on people with mental health problems at times, particularly when they're unwell.